That's true.
Yeah, that's the thing that has been really interesting is that it's like, I don't know, Callie. Do you want to talk about? Hi, this is Tolkien with Friends. I just started it.
Nice.
Yay!
But we're in a groove, so we're always trying to send people to the Discord. If you're listening to this, it is the coolest place on the internet. But Callie, you are really our queen of the Discord. So I'm just trying to think back, like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I just remember you messaging me like, do you want to join it? And I was like, sure thing.
Anything for Callie.
It happened really fast, and it's kind of out of the ashes of fire awoke story. So I was having a lot of trouble posting my cosplays or just trying to exist in my cosplays as a person of color, and I was getting like not formally banned because everyone knows that's not a good look, but
Right.
I was not being encouraged and being told that quote unquote spam filters were, deleting my posts, but really it was the mods and stuff. And I was like so discouraged, and I was like, what Tolkien community is there out there for me? Is there any at all? Like, how can I experience my love for Tolkien in like a safe and enjoyable way? And it just didn't seem like there were any communities out there that existed that were as progressive as I would like, or as a very minimum accepting of me, without questioning my presence there just off the bat because of how I look. So I hopped on live with Knew Better, Do Better. And I don't even remember what he was talking about, but I was distraught, and I was just there, and I was in tears, and he was telling me like, no, keep doing your cosplays are great. And he just tell the haters to go sit and spin, and he was really trying to encourage me and prop me up, and so I was very new to Discord and kind of online communities in general. I didn't know anything about them, but I knew that they existed, and so I just took the plunge one day, and I said, Willie has like the star power and the charisma to like bring people in and attract people, but I feel like I do the everyday work and sort of the housekeeping that keeps people. So that's why I think we make such a good team. And so we made the Discord, and he got all of his people into it, and then I just started. I think you guys were followers of Knew Better, Do Better first, right? And then that's sort of his Lord of the Rings community and my cosplayer community have sort of come together. And it's been awesome. But yeah, that's how the Discord, very long story, how the Discord came to be. It was, we were feeling, a lot of us, it turns out, we're feeling lost because of the state of the Tolkien communities.
Yeah, and I feel like there was like that huge flare up, like, what was it, February? Late January. I mean, when they were like, black elves, like they just like imploded on themselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like inescapable for everybody, I feel like. And so, I mean, I think I remember that live, maybe. I was just, and then, obviously knew, but it's like, go follow Callie, and I'm like, you got it. Yeah. Nick, when did you join the Discord?
So last night, because I'm a freak and wake up at 2:30 in the morning and can't go back to sleep, so I do weird things like scroll back to my first like on TikTok or something.
No, you didn't.
Stuff like that.
My goodness.
I tried. I like too many things, I'm discovering.
Oh, wow. Oh,
but, yeah. But I was just trying to like, I think I was talking about this in the Discord. like how weird time is with social media. So I was just
Oh my
trying to
God,
get a hand on like how long have I known these people that I feel very close to and like a real kinship with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Willie had a live for a trivia team he was putting together, and it was like early April. I went on his first live that he did it, where formerly Glamdring, now the Bard of Arda, won. And I was like, okay, I got to make sure I'm there on Tuesday. I don't care that I'm working. Like, I'm just going to like not schedule any meetings during that time and be on the live and be present so I can hopefully win. And I did. And then I, of course, joined the Discord, and here we are freaking 5 months later. Crazy. It feels like I've known you guys a lot longer.
Yeah. That is wild.
It does. That trivia event was really an excellent way to kick off the community. I didn't know it at the time. It was just this crazy idea that I had because I knew that New Better Do Better did a lot of trivia on his lives, and people really seemed to like that a lot. So I was like, hey, let's just make it a bigger event, and he was totally down for that. And then, yeah, I think that's how his trivia team, anyway, you and Nick, you were on that team, of course, and you guys studied and you quizzed each other, and you came together in a way that I've not seen adults do. Like that.
Gee, thanks.
That is incredible. Like you guys just, yeah, I don't know. I've never seen a group of six grown people like just gel so well and work so well and never argue. And it was,
I know, right?
Really
the closest is like bickering about like how we read a line, which is great because then you're not even fighting. It's just like, cool, I disagree with someone on something we both are passionate about. And so it's an actual debate of ideas rather than shouting at each other, which is what you see in TikTok comment threads, for example. Like, I don't know, I was avoiding the comment thread of the video that Willie just stitched that was like complaining about New Better just stitched, I should say. Complaining about the Peter Jackson
that
quote,
article,
the quote that came out, which Peter Jackson apparently doesn't even really care. He just told someone that happened, that he got ghosted by Amazon, which I'm like,
and he didn't even say it like that.
He didn't. They phrased it as ghosting.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't. I commented on it like almost immediately, and then like I was like, I don't want to know what happens after this. You know?
I know, right? I know, and yeah, as New Better said, the comment thread on the original video was a hot dumpster fire. So yeah, I'm avoiding that because I don't know. It's. I'm trying to give more people the benefit of the doubt that they're coming to this with like the teensiest bit of exposure to other creators' thoughts. Like they're not all sitting like us, analyzing it all day, every day. Like probably should be doing more of our actual jobs and things like that. But nope, I know. But my point is, like, a lot of these folks probably heard like one thing that got their hackles up, and then they're jumping into a comic thread. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think everyone's malicious. There are definitely some really racist and white nationalist trolls in those comment threads, and they should be stopped. I almost said put down. I'm not arguing for violence here, but you know what I mean. Corrected, exactly. Which Nubeta does a great job of. I think the rest of us do a great job of not just like piling on, like trolling the troll. Well, one of our friends does that very expertly. But, if you know, you know.
You know who you are.
Yes.
Now we'll find out if he actually listens to the podcast.
There you go. Easter egg, just to find out who our real friends are. There you go.
That's so cool.
But my jokes aside, my point is we act in our comment thread interactions the way we do in the Discord, which is to make an uplifting and friendly and safe place for people. And when we see people counteracting that, we get reasonably heated. I don't think we're like being assholes, but you know.
We have an immense capacity to be if we want to, which is very funny when that happens. But we are also able to make our points eloquently and support each other and help each other make better points.
Yes.
Which is
that reminds me of a video.
You guys.
Same. It reminds me of a video you did, Andy. I think you stitched something I made about like critical thinking with how we're looking at this stuff. And that's like such an important conversation to keep doing. And honestly, I'm glad we're talking about the 2 chapters we are, because they're so like dense with drama.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It felt weirdly poignant to be talking about these 2 chapters for some reason, because they're dark. They're dark moments in the story.
They sure are. They really are. So, okay. So maybe with that, maybe I'll do my real intro. Sorry, everybody. I hope you were having fun with that. But now, truly, welcome back to Tolkien with Friends. And I also just wanted to remind everyone that Anna is out on maternity. As of this recording, no baby yet. But probably by the time you hear this, there will be baby Anna.
Baby Anna.
Yeah. What she refuses to reveal the sex or the name to me until baby is here. So I'm not salty about it, even though she did tell me she would tell me and that I would keep it a secret. But no, it's a secret from all, even her husband. So,
wow. Okay.
But love her, light of my life. So she is out.
The moon of my stars, as she would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have this tattoo. We have this matching, like, sun-moon thing on the back of our arms.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So if I like you enough, I'll get a best friend tattoo with you. That's what, also, my cousin and I have the same floral.
Oh, sick.
On our arms. Yeah.
That's so cool.
I just can't stop. I'm just like, you want to do it? Are you down? But while she is learning to mom, the role of co-host would have been left open. But this is called Tolkien with Friends, and friends being plural, and like, so I always want to have multiple people. And so I'm so excited to welcome Kali Cosplay as our co-host while Anna is away. Woo! Kali, thank you so much for stepping in and helping me out. And joining the team.
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to go on this podcast journey with you. I get to listen to it, and now I get to be part of it, and I am very excited.
I know, and I just get to see this face every week.
Yay!
And, you know, we are also joined today by Nick, a.k.a. Fornos42 on TikTok. You may remember Nick from our previous bonus episode from where we talked about Rings of Power and the House of the Dragon trailers. But we're so glad to have him back to discuss Lord of the Rings. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks for having me, y'all. Super excited to talk more in depth about Tolkien with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. And just like we were saying, we've got some heavy chapters here. So we've got the Pyre of Denethor and the Tower of Cirith Ungol. I feel like I can't unhear the way Faramir in the movie says Cirith Ungol. Like, that's how it sounds in my brain.
Cirith Ungol, is that his name? And then he's
he's like, oh. And the same thing is true of like the way John Rhys Davies says the Emin Muil. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not touched, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes.
So
there's correct pronunciation, and there's that.
I love it.
Yep.
So last time we discussed the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and really focused on Eowyn's fight with the Witch King because, obviously. So
why would you talk about anything else?
I know. I mean, there was no room. There was no room to talk about you, Denethor. So we had to skip over the Pyre of Denethor section of the movie. So now we're like going back to that today, and we'll also get to see what's been going on with Frodo and Sam. Since the last time we saw them, Frodo had been captured by orcs, and Sam wasn't quite sure what to do.
Dun dun.
So if you are looking for timestamps, we're a little bit all over the place this time. We've never really had to do it like this before. You know, usually we just stop at the start. But you've got like at 2 hours and 31 minutes in, Pippin finds Gandalf to tell him that Denethor has lost his mind. And then, you know, we have the Witch King scene where he breaks Gandalf's staff, which we all know I hate. And then
Oh, good. We don't have to talk about that for 20 minutes, how much we hate the breaking of the staff.
It's already done it.
I pulled that out of my notebook here.
Yeah. And then from 2 hours, 36 minutes and 41 seconds to 2 hours, 58 minutes and 33 seconds is the confrontation with Denethor. And then a few... Or I think it's 2:38 to 2:30... 2:36 to 2:38. I think it's only like 2 minutes long.
Yeah, I was going to say 20 minutes is a long time. But
so it overlaps with I was overlapping my timestamp. So it's like 2:36 to 2:38 basically. And then we get some post-battle scenes in the Tower of Cirith Ungol from 2:55 to 3:03 or 3:04.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yes.
So you're ending your movie about 3 hours in. I don't know if anybody is doing that while they're listening to this, but you could, based on this information. So, okay,
we're gonna keep giving it to you.
Yeah, I'm just, if you want to check to see what happens, if you want to remind yourself, there you go. So now we have to go all the way back to when Gandalf confronts the Witch King, which is, the movie combines this with Pippin telling Gandalf about Denethor losing his mind. By doing this, though, we lose Gandalf's concern that if he saves Faramir, others will die instead. Mm-hmm. He was just about to ride out to battle to face the Witch King, and that's when Pippin is like, "Can't you save him?" And he's like, I guess. But
yeah, bro.
I had other stuff on my list. But obviously Gandalf thinks that it's the right thing to do, even though, you see him have kind of a moment where he's like, at first he's like, whatever, Pippin, but Pippin's like, no, for real, this guy's gonna burn his kid and himself alive, and he's like, okay, that's not good, we're gonna go check that out.
Yeah.
And so then Gandalf and Pippin ride up to Rathdenen, is that how you should say that? And it's like the mausoleum for the kings and stewards, like everybody be buried there. Well, not buried, it's like a street. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how to picture this place, but I think that the way the movies does it is good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't have it within arm's reach, but Atlas of Middle-earth has a little breakdown of the top of Minas Tirith, and it includes that.
Oh, that's nice.
It's not 100% canonical. This is a section where he does give us a decent amount of detail, and there's some other sources that have detail too. So, the movies did a decent job. I think it's a little bigger than kind of one building that. Right, because it calls
it's like inside. So it's on the 6th level. Mm-hmm. There's 7 levels of Minas Tirith. It's on the 6th level, and it's like in the mountain.
Yeah, or towards it. Anyway. Right. Yeah,
and it's big enough to have streets, but I think all of these streets have little tombs on them.
Right.
Yeah, and so Denethor's setting up a nice little spot for him and Faramir to not be buried in, but to just go up in flames. Actual cray-cray. This is it's so unhinged. Before I was doing this back-to-back comparison, I really had it in my brain that movie Denethor was slightly worse than book Denethor. But I don't know why, but no, Denethor is the worst in the book. He absolutely loses it at this moment.
He does.
But we get an explanation in the book, whereas I feel like in the movies we don't.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking of the moment. Okay, so Gandalf and Pippin arrive. Both versions, Denethor thinks Faramir is dead at this point already. Mm-hmm. In the movie, the pyre is already burning, and Gandalf and Pippin have to act super quickly to get Faramir out of there. And, Shadowfax only kicks Denethor onto the fire because Denethor is trying to, beat up Pippin, right?
Right.
And so... But in the movie, when he sees Faramir's eyes open, the way John Noble acts it, it's like that moment he realizes his son's alive, and a twinge of regret and oh, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
But your boy's already on fire, so nothing he can really do. He runs, and off the cliff, I guess you could. I don't even know.
Yeah.
What the little pointy, the ship part.
Which didn't even make sense because, as you said, it's on the 6th level, not the 7th. And that is like 2 football fields long. Like, whether you're talking soccer or American football, that's a long-ass way to run when you are on fire. Like,
So true.
so ridiculous.
But they're like, I really want this flaming boop as we like zoom out onto the battlefield.
Which was nice and dramatic, but like how
Very
it ends
dramatic.
in the book with like
All drama.
I'm on fire, they lock me in or they close the door on me, I'm on fire, and then the building it's in collapses. Like, that's pretty dramatic too.
Yeah,
so,
you know, that just, man, we have 2 collapsing structures in these chapters.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to that, I promise. But yeah, so in the book, he when he realizes that, like, he hears, it's not just seeing Faramir open his eyes, he hears Faramir like call out, like he says something, he like moans, and Denethor is just so like, well, you've already the way he says it, thou hast already stolen half my son's love. Not really sure how Denethor got that, but okay. And I know, and it just makes me think that Anna definitely called it when she said Denethor seemed insecure, like a few episodes ago when we first met him.
Yes.
Because now we have thou stealest hearts of my knights also, so that they rob me wholly of my son at the last. But in this at least thou shalt not defy my will, to rule my own end. And you know, he does get a couple of goons to light him on fire while he's holding on to dear life with that Palantir.
Yeah.
Palantir? I can't say it right, but he's holding on to that sandstone.
Oh, yeah.
And going to, and just, you know, saying peace out.
And that section is like way longer than the movie would make you lead you to believe, which I love because it's a great example of like mid-drama, like decent amount of action. We're getting actual world building. Like, you think the world building would kind of be done by the 3rd novel of a trilogy, or not done, but you know what I mean? Like, not like, we're getting some foundational stuff, like where the other Palantiri are. Like, you kind of didn't know that entirely, and then you find out like Denethor had one. They've seen this light glowing, and it's just this like, to me, it's like an epic, like an X-Men reveal, or like a Superman reveal, like the dastardly deeds of the villain. I don't think Denethor is a villain. I think he is, like, spoiler alert for Rings of Power. Not that I know how the show's going to do it, but if they're anything faithful to the source material, Denethor is like a microcosm of what happens to Numenor as a whole.
Oh, I love that. Expand on that for folks that aren't super familiar with what Rings of Power will be covering.
So in Numenor, they essentially, like, I'm gonna like way oversimplify this, but in Numenor, by the end of the Second Age, the Numenorian, the Kingsmen, they're called, are obsessed with death and or not dying, to the point that they go try to invade Valinor, Aman, the Undying Lands. The lands don't grant you immortality. That's just where immortal people live. But Sauron convinces them that through worshipping Morgoth and going and trying to capture this land, they will somehow become immortal. During that, there's all this obsession. Like, Gandalf has a great line about despair being like only for those who see the end without any doubt. Right. That end is bad. And like, Numenor is that on like a massive scale, on like a full political scale. And so I just see Denethor as this horribly sad, tragic figure. Obviously did some real bad shit, clearly. I mean, like, he was about to commit suicide, and what's the patricide? Not patricide, but like child.
Oh.
You know what I'm trying to say. Offspring murder.
It's usually infanticide, but I think...
Yeah, infanticide, but with a 30-year-old man. But part of the reason that's a microcosm of the whole Numenor trope is Denethor and Faramir are much more of the like noble lineage than Boromir is. Like Boromir has the same bloodline as the two of them, but he acts more like the middlemen that Faramir talks about in, I think it's the Window on the West when he talks about that. And it's just so cool to see the diverging, like the nobility of Faramir. Like, I would not pick this thing up if I found it on the highway, versus Denethor succumbing to despair because of the influence of not just Sauron, but like the acquisition of power in and of itself, vis-a-vis like using the Palantir to see what's going on around the world, potentially see what he thinks is the future, but is a manipulation.
Right.
Sauron.
It's, you know, when you think about it, if because of who Denethor is, you know, I think that he was probably going to fall more easily to the Palantir than like if Faramir had been the one to like hang on to it, or like, I mean, obviously Aragorn, or you know what I mean, but like because how do I want to describe Denethor? Because like, of course, there is the loss of his wife, you know, the mother of his children, which I think did affect him deeply.
Yeah.
And but the way that Denethor has chosen or like has handled his grief, and it's almost just like he becomes more self-centered, you know what I mean? Like he's not like he's leading his people, but like and he's done things to keep Gondor, you know, to keep evil at bay in a sense.
Yeah,
but
totally.
The fact that I think he's just too arrogant to understand that Sauron is not showing you everything, dude. Like he is doing it, he's manipulating you. That's the name of the game for him. You know, he doesn't have to come out and kick your ass on the battlefield if you have already admitted defeat, you know? And that's essentially what we see happen here. Why Gandalf has to lead. I mean, in the book, you know, we've got more Imrahil and we've got more, you know, other people helping Gandalf, but Denethor essentially is like, whatever, it's over. And Gandalf is like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So by him having you know, he obviously has learned some things from it, and it probably, you know, at first it probably did help Gondor, you know, in some ways. But I feel like, and you can see it in like a tiny way with Pippin, like he's like obsessed with it for a minute, you know, like until that temptation is taken away, but it never is from Denethor because Denethor is keeping it a secret, you know. I think there's something about the Palantir where it's like you want to keep looking, like you kind of can't help yourself if you don't have that really strong like will or like not reason not to look, you know.
Right. Which gets into, this is way deeper than you get just in the book, but in the essay Osanwe Kenta, which was republished in Nature of Middle Earth, that's where we learn about basically the telepathy of the elves, the Valar, and some more noble men have this ability to, it's like the opening of minds. And like we see that at the very end of Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, and Celeborn are sitting around each other and like just sitting, but you find out they're talking by just through thought, and it's lovely and really interestingly done. But it's just kind of this weird moment in the book. But that's like a whole thing, and that has a part to play in how you use any of the Palantiri. So like Pippin, I'm glad you brought Pippin's use of the Orthanc stone up, because he doesn't have a very strong will. I'm not dissing Pippin. I love Pippin, especially book Pippin.
I mean, but we know Pippin. Like he's the most impulsive hobbit we've got.
He's also a child. Like exactly. Yeah, like my guy just hasn't, I mean, he's seen a lot more than most adult hobbits, but he hasn't like taken what he's learned and turned it into wisdom yet. He just like has experiences that he's still in the experience, basically.
Right.
Whereas Denethor comes from a noble lineage, embodies a lot of the Númenórean tropes, positive and negative, and is also very learned in lore. So like he had a chance to do something good with that, but it's another example of like, if you do that in a vacuum, like if he had brought up the fact that he had a Palantir to Gandalf, not Saruman, Gandalf, right. Maybe something good could have come of it. Maybe Gandalf probably would have told him to stop and say, you don't have the right to use that. That's only for the king. But also maybe they could have used that information, fortified their southern borders against the Umbars, against the, what's the word?
Corsairs.
Corsairs, thank you. Yes, Corsairs of Umbar. There you go. Yep. Or who knows? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. He doesn't consider. While at the same time, he does know more about the bigger picture, right? It's never. I mean, you want to put him in contrast to like the rest of the Fellowship, and they are never doing anything because of how it would help them in that moment, or it's always good like point. This is how I can help do something to maybe make it easier for my friends, for my family. And Denethor is not thinking that way at all, Totally. He's just like Gondor, 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 and that kind of turns into, I feel like, his obsession with Boromir a little bit, because he is such a valiant man, and he is, and Denethor is a man in despair, right? And he thinks that now it's just got to be about strength of arms, and doesn't understand the value that Faramir brings, which is like heartbreaking. But then when he loses Boromir and then thinks he's losing Faramir, it's still all about Denethor. Like, at every turn, like he's got himself all dressed up in mail, even though he's not out on the field. It's just because
he's playing the part rather than doing what Theoden, who in some ways is like the foil to Denethor, like Theoden's in his 80s and is leading the charge.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Doing a great job.
Doing it just a bang up job.
Yeah, just the actual. It's funny because in the book we see that those things are directly like in one chapter, Gandalf is basically telling Denethor like, you're basically doing the Witch King thing of leading from behind, but even the Witch King is out on the field. Like Denethor doesn't even make it outside the city, and then immediately we see Theoden show up and leading his men, and like no one can overtake him. He's ever before them. It's a really lovely contrast of like, because I feel like at the beginning when we first see Theoden, he is in a worse position than Denethor in some ways. Like he is actively being like, super duper. Like he's physically.
He's like spiritually poisoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just completely not himself, like you said.
Yeah, and he like does a total 180, but Denethor. I mean, and granted, I'm sure the Palantir that's rough, but I think because of who Denethor was at the time of using the, you know what I mean? Like he's not he's not like totally without blame in that.
Yeah, for sure.
And also just like the commitment to burning yourself alive. I mean, I don't think it gets more unhinged than that.
Yeah.
You're very stuck on that. You're very...
It's crazy. It's just like...
It is, but it's... it shows like the ultimate hubris of... and that goes back to my comparison with what happens with Númenor. Like Denethor says in the movie, and Gandalf says, I think Gandalf is the one who says it in the book, about like the heathen kings of old, like speared on by the Dark Lord, I think is how it's in the book. And
right,
like what a lovely little snapshot into what happened. Like, they had the hubris of saying, like, I'm going to choose the time I die, which from, I think Tolkien did a decent job of not bringing too much of his Catholicism into this, but this is a moment where, like, the fact that Tolkien's Catholic,
or when Gandalf says, like, it is not, what does he say? It is,
I know.
Basically, like, you don't get to decide. It's not your choice.
Yeah, only the heathen kings of old.
Authority is not given to you to order the hour of your death.
Yes. Which goes back to...
You don't even have the authority to make that call.
Something you said just a minute ago, Andy, made me think... You compared something to, like, how the Fellowship does things kind of altruistically, or at least for each other versus selfishly. And that just makes me think of that moment where Pippin comes up to Gandalf and is trying to convince him, and Gandalf's basically like, I literally can't... I have to go with Pippin and save Faramir, but that will cause evil. That's like a moment of just faith. Like, I have to do the right thing, even if I know it will likely lead to sorrow. That's similar to, not quite as dramatically so, Aragorn's, like, debate at the start of Two Towers. Like, do we follow Merry and Pippin, or do we go do the thing that makes more expedient sense in terms of the war? And no, they do the thing that doesn't make any freaking sense from a military standpoint, but it leads to such better outcomes.
Yeah.
And while horrible things happen, Theoden dies being the main horrible thing that maybe Gandalf could have done something about. It ends up, in my opinion, being better because Faramir lives.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that. So, when, like, Tolkien does this thing of, like, flipping, because in the books, we've talked about how it's structured, right, where you're following a certain storyline and then it flips back to somebody else's. And generally, that'll be like a whole chapter dedicated to whatever Merry's got going on, and then a whole chapter dedicated to whatever Pippin's got going on. And then more significantly with the changes with Sam and Frodo, right? But he will drop in these little reminders about where you are in relation to something else that you have recently read. So as they are taking Faramir to the Houses of Healing, they heard a great cry that went up from the field before the gate, and rising shrill and piercing into the sky, passed and died away in the wind. So terrible was the cry that for a moment all stood still, and yet when it passed, suddenly their hearts were filled up, or lifted up in such a hope as they had not known since the darkness came out of the east. And it seemed to them that the light grew clear and the sun broke through the clouds. And like, that scream is our boy Witch King dying. And so that's the moment of, Éowyn's victory. But when Gandalf hears that, you see his heart break a little bit. And, he's like kind of pauses and looks out, over the city, and
as if carven in white, I think it says.
Right? Like he's stone right now. And and he says, beyond hope, the captain of our foes has been destroyed, and you have heard the echo of his last despair. But he has not gone without woe and bitter loss, and that I might have averted but for the madness of Denethor. Now, Callie, I know you brought this up to me the other day. What do you think Gandalf is saying right there?
I had a total... I mean, how many times have I read these books? I don't even know. I don't even care to count.
Uncountable.
And even now, I'll come across something and it made me bolt, like, straight up in bed. I just sat up and I went, oh my God. Moments that I can... and it's amazing that I can still have those with a book that I've read so many times, thousands of times, hundreds of times, probably realistically. But I mean, that's still a lot of times to read the same book.
It is, especially one that's so long.
But it was that moment, and also the moment where he's debating whether to go to Faramir or to go out to battle, and this is in the books, and I suddenly realized that Gandalf had to make this horrible horrible choice whether to save King Theoden or Prince, or Steward Prince Faramir. And like, what a horrible choice for him to have to make. And then I just like spiraled, and I was put myself in Gandalf's shoes for a moment in his robes, and I was like, but he's known Theoden for so long, of course, right? And and for all his life, for all of Theoden's life, of course, Gandalf's life spans much longer. But you know, I can't even imagine. And then I guess it's like it's that cost benefit analysis that he would have had to make on the battlefield, and it's to save the young over the old, but. Well, what a heartbreaking thing to have to do, and I wept a little bit for Gandalf in that moment.
And I think that's one of the things where Gandalf is. There's so many. He's such an interesting character because he isn't a human, right? But there is something so human about him. He has these like amazing powers and this amazing ability to like bring people together and to kind of like do what's right
hearts.
And like doing the right thing all the time, but then they're like when he's like teasing the hobbits, or like when in like these moments where he's clearly gutted but has to carry on. I don't know, I think it's a really beautiful moment for Gandalf, and at the same time, it makes me think like there's a lot of reasons why I kind of understand why he went with Faramir, but I think that is it not true that he was a little apprehensive about like facing the Witch King?
I think I wish I remembered. I want to say it's at the end of the chapter where we leave, like where we see the Witch King leave after just coming in through the gates.
And he says something to Denethor, like when talking about the captain of the Witch King, where he gives the impression that he's not totally sure how that would have gone down if it was like them head to head. And I don't think that's why he chose Fair. I don't think that he wasn't going to do it. But had he done that, would Éowyn and Merry have had their chance to?
That's just what I was going to say. Like, it happened the way it did. It sucks for Gandalf. I 100% sympathize with him, and I'm with you, Kali. Like, my guy was in between not just a rock and a hard place, but like a pointy death trap and ultimate sorrow of letting like a young, promising person burn to death. And but it happened the way it needed. Like, Éowyn may have not been the person who was destined to kill the Witch King, but like she was basically like it had to happen that way, or Gandalf probably would have at least been beaten in the sense that he couldn't wield as much power, as much like conviction over people, just like kind of his spirit be broken. I Newbit has talked about that a few times on like lives and stuff, and he's like, yeah, Witch King's winning against Gandalf because that's how it's fated to be in a sense. And I'm not saying it's predetermined perhaps, but we also, I mean, I was listening to some old episodes of Tolkien with Friends, and I this is great because I get to interject this is why Tom Bombadil is vital to the story.
Yes. Yeah. I know, it's like because the thing is, like, it is Éowyn's moment in a lot of ways, right? But there, again, like our Hobbit friends, they're like coming in hot, like they're like the way that they contribute is important, and Merry's stabbing of the Witch King with that particular blade, and almost even like in that particular spot on his leg, like
it seems,
because it made him fall forward, and he's I'm presuming a big guy, so then Éowyn is able to like really like like make that killing blow, and and it's one of those things where like I understand Gandalf wanting to protect everybody and feeling like he needed to be the one to, at least take the blow from the Witch King, right? Which is probably what he was setting out to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they, Eowyn and Merry hadn't just, like, done everything against everybody's advice for no reason, like they're there for a reason, and they did what they needed to do. Because I just think, like, I don't know, it would have been so bad to, like, somehow lose Gandalf again. I don't even know. I don't even want to know what would have happened if the Witch King had been like, I got this, because I mean, we've still got more Nazgul hanging out, but we're down one.
We're down one, and the most like the prophecy that Glorfindel makes in like a Third Age 1000 or whenever that battle. No, it was later than that, but
sure.
About no living man, blah blah blah, that whole thing. That was about specifically the Witch King. So, like, I assume that some of the same spells protecting him, spells for lack of a better term, are true for the rest of the Nazgul, but, like, their absolute dominance isn't the same. So, like, the loss of the Witch King is massive, just because there's only 8 and they are essentially immortal beings that can instill fear into your hearts, like, yeah, but your captain just got beat. So that's hard to, like, that has hardened the hearts of the men of Gondor, the fighters of Gondor and Rohan for future battles ahead.
Yeah. And it leaves, I mean, once that happened, we see Gothmog, like, I don't know, he, like, tries without the Witch King, throwing his people at our heroes, but it's just, it's not enough.
How did you feel about his addition in the movie?
I mean, sure.
Whatever. I guess I'll give it to them because of something we're going to talk about in a little bit with Cirith Ungol and what I assume you've already talked about with the choices of Master Samwise, which is, like, seeing the more human side of orcs. And so, like, getting an orc that's more of a character than just, like, something for us to hate and be happy when they die. Like, no, this guy is, like, a real person with, like, a little more complex thought, and you really want him to die. Like, it's more satisfying when he finally dies, which he dies in different ways between the extended and the theatrical, right?
Really? You can't ask me about the theatrical, Nick.
Okay, that's fair. In the extended, he is wounded by... Oh, no, that's what it is. Yeah. It's implied in the theatrical that Eowyn kills him, I think. But he doesn't. He just gets hurt and is, like, lying there. And then in the extended, when Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas come, and they just, like, come in and dispatch with him, like, so quickly. That's
they, like, chop him up. It's so weird.
It's really weird and, like, anticlimactic, and you gave us, like, a reason to hate this character, and then he's just, like, done so willy-nilly. It's very silly, but anyway.
I know they add that whole, like, him kind of, like, chasing Eowyn thing before she gets to say goodbye to Theoden. Yes. And it's like, why put him there?
And then why have Aragorn is within, like, 20 feet of Eowyn, I would have to... It's like, what the fuck is going on?
But then in the movies, it's like Pippin has to go out and find Merry next to the dead Oliphant, and I'm like, how? You were right there a second ago. Like,
right? It's so silly.
The book version doesn't make any more sense, though, where he's just, like, wandering and then gets separated from the group and nobody is looking after him. Like,
fair.
The kind of...
That's Houses of Healing. We're getting in on... So I think Tim is supposed to join us for that
one. Sorry, Tim. Hey, one beard, same as another. Not really. He wins that debate.
Glorious beards.
Yes. But back to the chapter at hand.
Yeah.
We do get a little bit of stuff about the Houses of Healing, which I think is really interesting. It's like the insertion of a practical moment, which is where like the women who stayed got to stay. And I thought that was an interesting inclusion because Tolkien doesn't usually give us details like how the city is ordered in a sea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we don't get details like that. So it was kind of nice and refreshing to see, for me anyway, to see a little bit of the George R. R. Martin, what's the tax policy of this kingdom, like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they in the so for the movie folks, there is a section of the Houses of Healing in the extended edition right here, but I think I'm gonna save it.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, because I feel like there's so much with Aragorn in that piece. Also, I haven't released this episode yet, so you guys don't know this, but me and Amber watched Anna in real time learn that, because we were talking about Eowyn and, mentioning Faramir a little bit, but Amber threw out that they get married, and Anna was like, I didn't know that. And so it's just interesting, like, now knowing that isn't obvious, you know what I mean? Like, watching the movies like that, and I noticed in that quick little section of Houses of Healing, like, they just have Eowyn and Faramir kind of looking at each other, and
they're doing only the smallest amount of showing with zero telling, and it's not like at this. I love the original trilogy, don't get me wrong, but by this point, there's a lot of stuff that, like, if you don't know the books, you're missing things, like that exact thing.
Yeah,
and it kind of sucks because there's elements of that romance that I absolutely love, and I'm not the guest for that chapter, so I will let you guys have that conversation.
I'm so sorry, Nick.
It's okay. I'll just say I'm largely a fan of it, and I don't think it's well, anyway. We can talk about that another time.
I know. Well, you've probably heard us, like, railing against how much Eowyn, like, throws herself at Aragorn in the movies.
Ugh, God.
I know. And so it's just like, I understand why they wouldn't make it obvious that Eowyn and Faramir end up together, because, like, they have spent so much time making Eowyn obsessed with Aragorn.
It's true. If they were to be book accurate at this stage, it would, like, undermine all the character building for better, or, in my opinion, way worse. Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, man. Sometimes they write themselves into corners, and it's like, well, shit. Like, now it's just worse if you had just stuck with the book a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit. So...
Well, so basically that chapter ends. And then meanwhile, technically at the same time that Merry is arriving to Minas Tirith and Pippin is watching Denethor lose his mind, Sam is trying to figure out how to rescue Frodo. So, where Peter Jackson's version focuses on, like, the violence of the orcs, like, we start with Frodo in the movie, and then you see the orcs fighting over the mithril shirt, and then they all just start killing each other.
Yeah.
Tolkien really focuses on Sam for this, and Sam, like, coming upon all the dead orcs, and then we, like, kind of theorize that they're, I mean, we figure out later kind of what they're fighting over once he sees a couple of alive orcs, but, for Tolkien, it's really, like, Sam's perspective now, and how his love for Frodo is really the only thing getting him to put one foot in front of the other. So... after all this that the movies, like, did to show how irresistible the ring is, it skims over Sam's experience with the ring in this chapter. And we've discussed this with Edith previously, how Sam feels the power of the ring growing and imagines himself not only overthrowing Sauron, but turning the plains of Gorgoroth into a garden. But
what dangerous aspirations!
I know, right?
Yeah, I think this was like one of the Lothlorien chapters where he. We were talking about the gifts of Galadriel and how he gets, the earth and the seeds that he eventually uses to make the Shire beautiful again at post-war, you know. And it's funny because it's like, of everyone that is tempted by the ring and whatever it is that they imagine themselves doing, Sam's the only one that gets close. He turns a realm, if you want to say shy, he improves it,
yes,
and turns it into a garden with like the Malorn seed and all the others that he gets.
That's very true. Nice, that's great. I love.
He's just that wholesome. It's like, you know what, you deserve this.
But it's a good example of like the root of the corruption is it doesn't matter like the malice of the thing you want to do. If he had like leaned into the ring, he still would have been corrupted, even though the thing is a wholesome thing that he wants to do.
Oh yeah.
Because it would have been done out of ego, out of selfishness, like we were seeing with Denethor.
Yeah.
Versus out of the altruism of like, well, I got to save my people.
Yeah, but
like,
it makes me think of like how, so obviously, well, not obviously, but we've talked about it before, so now you should know that like Galadriel kind of tests all of them in that moment, and so she knew that about Sam.
She sure did.
And so she's like, you know what, you might want this. You know?
Just a almost meta statement about Tolkien there. Like everything, this book isn't without flaws, I'll admit that, but like it is so perfect at like every little thing fell back into place. Like Galadriel knew that, like you just said, and we see that come to fruition. As far as I know, Tolkien didn't know that that's how Sam's character was going to end up when he wrote that chapter with Galadriel testing them and giving them gifts and things like that. And yes, he reworked things and blah, blah, blah. But so many drafts over the 14 years it took him to write this or whatever. But the point is, like, it's just so satisfying when you see those things come to fruition, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool also to see it, the flip side of it, like the other side of the coin of what a negative version of that foresight could lead to vis-a-vis what we see with Denethor, what we see with Sam's vision of like the plains being taken over. And I think, doesn't he have a line about like casting down weapons and stuff? Like he would want to
he's gonna like he's gonna like overthrow, he's gonna lead people to overthrow Sauron and then, you know, make everything chill.
But that's with like dominance of will rather than collaboration, which we know is like a cardinal sin in this world. So
yeah, I love that. And it's funny because so Sam has his temptation moment, but unlike everyone else that we've seen, I mean, like maybe with the exception of Galadriel in a way, but like he snaps out of it almost immediately. It says, in that hour of the trial, it was the love of his master that helped most to hold him firm, but also deep down in him lived still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. Love that. He knew in the core of his heart that he was not large enough to bear such a burden, even if such visions were not a mere cheat to betray him. The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm, his own hands to use, not the hands of others to command.
Yes, King.
Yeah.
I love him. I love that moment. And this is the moment, like, the older I get, the more I see, like, queer readings being totally legit. And shout out to Chris with their video about queer readings of stuff, hopeful relationships we'll see in Rings of Power. Because reading, like, a gay romance or a pan-bi romance between these people does not mean we are implying that sex is happening. There's just more complexity to this relationship than standard friendship fare, and that's okay. Like, we should want this level of love that you're pulled out of the temptation of the most powerful artifact on the earth to do the right thing still. That's so fucking cute.
And if you think about it, he's on Sauron's doorstep, you know?
Literally.
And he has explained that he feels the ring growing in power. Like, this thing is trying, and he knows that. But he still has the ability to deny it, you know, and to like say like, no ring, shush.
No ring.
No ring.
No, stop it. And
Just
Sam,
get back in that pocket.
right, exactly. And it's like, well, Sam hasn't been carrying the ring for very long. He is still. I don't know.
He's been just as close to it as Boromir ever was, and
yes,
Boromir was
closer.
And Boromir was hundreds of miles away from Mordor. Where, like, I do think there's like a proximity to Mordor equals higher strength. I don't know how you would do that math, but like,
right.
Boromir was more susceptible. That's why he succumbed to it. But
yeah, it's just like. I mean, like, if you weren't impressed by Sam by now, like, you absolutely should be, because he not only did not, like, says, like, no ring, that is a ridiculous thing that you think I could do. No.
Yep.
But he also gives it back to Frodo in a minute. Like, I mean, Isildur couldn't do that. I don't even know if Gandalf could do it. Like, he didn't even want to touch it. You know what I mean? So, hobbits. I'll just leave it at that.
It goes back to, like, the faith and hope thing we were talking about a little bit ago with, like, Gandalf having faith that I just have to do the right thing. Horrible shit's going to happen either way, but something's going to work out. Like, he knows how Iluvatar works at some level, and he's like, if I just do the right thing, at least I died nobly if it all ends in shit. And that's kind of what, in a sense, we're seeing here. Like, this is the coming together of the plan that wasn't really a plan at the end of the Council of Elrond, at the start of The Ring Goes South, really. Where it's like, they didn't know how they were going to get into Mordor. They just had faith that they would figure it out when they got there. And they did, kind of. I mean... in a sense, it's like a perfect plan, because they just had faith that the hand of God basically would guide them in the right direction.
Right.
And this is why Sam had to be there. Like, he fulfilled the task of the Fellowship. And he says that in the Choices of Master Samwise, like, it's up to me. Like, no one else is here to pick up this burden, so I have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny to think about way back at the Council of Elrond when they tell Gandalf that Gollum has escaped, and he's just like, well, oh well.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. I'm sure it'll work out.
Come back around sometime.
That part always reminds me of, like, the perfect, like, chill parent who's like, it is what it is. You broke the window, but, like, it's broken. There's no point in me being mad at you. Like, it already happened. And it's like, oh yeah, cool. That's great.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. It's interesting also to think about, like, what Gollum is up to right now, because we don't see him for a while. Like, definitely not in the movie. But we'll see him a little bit sooner in the book. But yeah, I'm just like, I mean, there's no way he's following, but maybe not. I don't know what he's up to.
I don't either. Like, is there some vantage point that he could be observing things? Because, like, we know Gollum couldn't get through the Watchers.
No, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. There's, I don't know. Like, the orcs were able to run out of there. Maybe they're like, evil things, come on in. I don't know.
Right. True.
So yeah. So let's talk about the Watchers. So, for our movie fans, you do see Sam pass these statues on the way into the tower. I don't think they look exactly as how they're described in the book. I don't recall seeing any beaks or claws really on them. And they're supposed to have, like, 3 heads, which I always thought was cool. Honestly, could make a really cool Jim Henson movie with these little guys. So they are statues, essentially. And he walks right in, no problem, really, in the movie. The main thing he has to worry about are orcs. But in the movie, like, there's really not so much a problem in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. It's just, like, he takes out the orcs, he gets in, he gets Frodo, and he gets out. In the book, these statues that he passes by are inhabited by evil spirits, it says. And they block his attempt to walk through. He compares it to like walking into one of Shelob's webs, but there's nothing there. And after a few failed attempts, he holds up the phial of Galadriel, which makes the Watcher's will waver and crumble into fear, and he's able to get past them, but then they let out a shrill cry that is answered by the harsh clang of a bell. I don't know who's in charge of this bell. Like,
I know.
That bell goes off a few times.
It does. And the second time, it's like, I'm pretty sure there's no one left to ring this bell, so...
It's just, I don't know, auto...
Yeah.
Bell? Magic bell. And Sam says to himself that he's, like, rung the front doorbell, and he's...
With Amazon owning the rights to this now, I'm just thinking of a Ring doorbell.
My God. Oh, no.
Oh, God.
But it's interesting because we hear this cry, and you almost expect something to happen because of it. I suppose nothing... I'm gonna say this, that, like, something does happen...
Mm-hmm.
in a minute, but like you would think there would be like an immediate reaction, but I guess the problem is that all the orcs have killed themselves, like killed each other.
Right.
So, like I don't know how they would have actually like. I don't know. I don't.
It's too bad they didn't think of some way to do this, because it's like, as in terms of book stuff, like this is a very low magic world, obviously, but this is where like, this is some magic happening. Like this is the will of one thing fighting against the will of another. And Sam, he didn't pass his wisdom save, but he did have an item to allow for some, to break a hole through their impenetrable wall of evil, basically. And it's so interesting. Like it's this little moment of like higher powers at work, but we're seeing it from quite literally the lowest perspective. Like Sam doesn't know how magic works. No. Sam could never make magic work. That's not in his makeup. We learned that in The Hobbit. Like hobbits don't have magic, and that's fine. Like, but they still have like free will to act. And that's kind of where this gets really interesting and muddy in a fun way to me.
Mm-hmm. I wish that they could have done it like, I don't know, we know he has the file.
True.
Yeah, and I'm also just a little bit surprised. Like, I feel like they went harder on the design for the gate of Minas Morgul. Like, those guys that have, like, their tongues hanging out.
Yeah, both carven in bestial and human form or whatever. And like, we get that really dramatic, like not squared shot of them, which is really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
It makes you feel the fear. This, like, how do you
I feel like they were like, I feel like they were like, you know what, we already gave you one gate, we're not going to do it again.
Fair. But a bigger gate is coming just a, little while later.
True. But I do like the don't worry about it, Callie.
My cat is doing her warbling.
It's very cute.
I'm sorry, guys. She'll be done in like a minute. Don't
worry about it.
It's all good.
She's got stuff to say. She probably likes the idea of the Watchers too. Same. And I do, it is kind of interesting to think about. I didn't write this down, but I was just like us talking about it. The last time we had a Watcher, they were in the water. And I feel like every time we've got a Hobbit kind of being like, what the heck is that? It's a Watcher.
It's funny that's what you bring up, because I was just thinking, like, it's too bad they did bring this up simply because it shows the mystery of the world. Like, this is deeper than humans, orcs, elves, hobbits, Sauron. Like, there's things that no one understands in the world. And I totally get pulling Tom Bombadil out. Like, that's fine. But, like, give me some of that mystery. Some of that stuff that Tolkien very deliberately left unexplained.
Yeah.
So that it feels like a deeper world than he wrote explanations for. Because that's, like, one of the coolest... I think that's part of what makes us keep coming back to it. Like, Callie, you were saying earlier, like, and getting new things out of it. Like, for example, what are these evil spirits? Are they Maiar that never left, like post Morgoth, but
is
they
there
kind
like
of were just
something
like,
less than that?
well,
Is
so
there
one,
another name for that?
what, so he wrote in, I want to say it was Book of Lost Tales, about other spirits, so like that are also as old as time, like the Ainur are, but they aren't in that hierarchy.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something like that, but I think it's more likely that so when elves die, I'm sure you've talked about that I know, in fact, I know you've talked about the whole Halls of Mandos and everything. They don't have to go there when they die. They can, their Fëanor can deny the call of Mandos. And so I think it may be ancient spirits of Avari that just were like, I don't trust the Valar. Even if I'm just a spirit, I don't trust the Valar. So I'm going to stay here. That were corrupted in some way, shape, or form differently than what happened with the orcs.
Yeah.
And there's some basis for this. It's not canon per se, but there's some basis for it from the histories of Middle Earth of like the spirits of Avari are what inhabited things like werewolves, for example. Like Karkaroth may have been. Karkaroth was probably a Maiar, but some of the other werewolves might have been, rehoused as best they could by Morgoth, which is a terrifying thought.
Yeah,
And,
it's interesting to think about, like, because there does seem to be, like, Sauron is Sauron, right? He's our big bad. He's got a lot of stuff going for him. But there are some things about Mordor that I feel like he doesn't necessarily have control over. Like, Shelob being the big one. But I think there's a lot of other creepy crawly guys in there that are just around because they're icky and it's the icky place. You know what I mean?
Do you think these Watchers were originally evil? Like, do you think they were part of the Númenórean construction?
Right. So, also to recap, Sam notes that this tower is clearly not of Sauron's design. That it must have been built by the Númenor. And like to keep a watch on Mordor. Obviously, like, they were much closer. Like, Minas Ithil, we know, is also similar, and the Black Gate even is originally by the Númenóreans trying to keep a watch on things, keep things in, rather than, that kind of thing.
Or basically just built half of or more of Sauron's infrastructure for him.
Yeah, I know. It didn't work the way that they had planned. Which, that happens sometimes. But it's interesting, like, to think about this gate, because obviously I wouldn't say that the way that these statues are described are a Númenórean design. Right? They've got 3 heads and claws and the beaks and stuff. They don't look cute. But so it makes me think that, like, whereas it once was a watchtower, but now it has, like, this fence around it, that was probably an installation after the fact.
I think I agree. I'm just doing a quick Google to see if there's anything on, like,
Google.
It's just super interesting.
Yeah. Do a quick Google.
Yeah. Well, we can keep going. I'll interject if I find anything cool.
Cool. So, like we mentioned, Sam gets through these no problem in the movie. He uses the Phial of Galadriel to get through them in the book. And, I mean, there's differences, right? But I think that the thing that I really there is something about the way that Tolkien writes where he is he's not, like in the Peter Jackson, we've got him stabby stab the orcs. He runs up, he like finds, we have that other orc cut back to Frodo, but Sam saves him. It's really shortened a lot, condensed. But Tolkien really sits with Sam in this moment where he doesn't know the layout of like this tower. He doesn't know what he's doing. He does follow an orc that is afraid that like misjudges Sam's size and goes up, and he overheard, what is it, like Shagrat and Gorbag, like talking about how they're gonna put Frodo at the very tippity top of this tower. So that's where he's like, all right, I'm gonna go to as far as I can, and he does, but he's like searched the whole tippity top, and he can't find where the heck Frodo is, and he bursts in and he begins to sing. Not bursts into song, but he like feels defeated and moved, and it says moved by what, though in his heart he could not tell, Sam began to sing. And
what a lovely song he sang.
it's such a, I really like this because the way Tolkien handles despair and loss and uncertainty, like, and I know they didn't really have time or like a way to do this in the movie, but we have so many of these moments where our heroes are at a loss of what to do, and yet they find a way to keep going, like to do something. You know, like we've been talking about, like often it is their love for each other that breaks through the griefs and gives them the motivation to do something, anything sometimes, you know, and I think that's what's happening here, that like in that moment, like he, and it's like his own original words. It's not like a song that he's heard before.
Right.
And we know how important songs are to Tolkien. You know, that's music is literally the way the world was created.
Right.
And while singing doesn't really sound like Sam is doing anything, Frodo hears it and like tries to respond. Mm-hmm. And that split second of, did I just hear Frodo? It like revives Sam's hope in his search. And also it like alerts one of the orcs that the orc assumes that it's Frodo singing. And so he's like, well, shut up, you know?
But that leads unintentionally to Sam knowing, oh, there's a trap door. It's not a dead end anymore.
Yeah. It's like, how would he have known that? And also the orc brought a ladder.
Right. Convenient.
And so instead of like, I'll bleed you like a stuck pig, not if I stick you first, we have like Sam hearing the orc. He's like berating Frodo, and then he hears a whip crack, and Sam runs up there, and it says, you know, the orc raised a whip a second time, but the blow never fell. Mm-hmm. Which I love. I really like that just as much as Not If I Stick You First.
I think Not If I Stick You First is a little too funny for how poignant this reunion moment should be.
Should have been, yeah.
Like, it's just a little, and Jackson's so good at making things funny, and Fran and Philippa in their writing are so good at making things funny, but like now is maybe not the time. I don't know. It's not like a ha-ha moment.
Have to be funny. Like ha-ha, like that TikTok sound.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, it is interesting that like he does stick humor in certain places a lot more. Not that Tolkien is never not funny.
Tolkien's hilarious, but
yeah. But in the book, it is like that moment is like incredibly sweet. I mean, Sam does have to kick an orc's ass. That doesn't not happen, but he doesn't really talk to him. He just does it. But I feel like the reunion is so incredibly sweet in the books, whereas it's kind of like getting down to business more in the movie.
Yes.
You know, what were you going to say, Nick?
Which is so weird, given the fact that in the movie, they, for whatever frickin' reason, had Frodo send Sam home.
No.
I think that, other than what they did to Faramir, is my least favorite change.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of aspects of the adaptation that I'm totally fine with, but like, why did you do that?
Why?
What did that add? Like, I think they were trying to create this like drama that they knew they couldn't have because they had to make Cirith Ungol like pretty succinct. And it's like, no. You just undermined their whole, like, now this looks like an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
In a sense, like now it looks like Sam is codependent on Frodo and Frodo's codependent on Sam, but Frodo's being like a horrible dickhead to him.
Yeah.
Like we get a little bit of that in this moment with Frodo's complete, like, give me that ring
Right.
back.
Yeah, it's funny, Bo, because in the movie they have Frodo do that all the time to Sam. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they have I don't know, like, again, I think I've talked about this before. I think, Callie, on your very first episode, we talked about this with Frodo, how they, like, weaken Frodo a lot. Like, he just is, like, succumbing to problems all the time. He's just,
Yes.
like, he's not doing so hot a lot of the time. And so they have his character a little bit weaker in that he is constantly snapping at Sam and, like, defending Gollum, and it's really not like that at all.
Right.
Like, Sam and Frodo obviously I think the age difference has something to do with it, but, like, in the book it's in the reverse, right? Like, Frodo is older than Sam is, and
Yes.
he is so wise and kind, and
the closest we get to the snapping, other than these direct, like, ring induced awful moments, is like the typical hobbitry, like, ribbing each other.
Yeah.
Which Sam doesn't really participate in. I think that has something to do with, like, the class structure of the hobbits. Like, servants don't do, like, which is very English, for better or worse. But, like, we see Pippin, like, being a dick to Sam, but it's hilarious because, like, everyone knows it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do see, like, I wouldn't call it, like, snapping, but I was just thinking about, like, early on when Frodo, he'll, like, sometimes be like, ugh, Sam,
Sam,
like,
you ass.
yeah, like, he'll be a little, or, like, you get Frodo being whinier, at the beginning of Fellowship, where he's like, ugh, I have so much stuff to carry, and Sam is like, I could take some more, and he's like, no, you obviously have enough. He's like, oh, never mind, I'm being an idiot.
It's more self-deprecating than harmful to Sam, right?
Yeah. And so, like, I think this is the first moment where, but Peter does that too, where he'll pick one moment, one line, and then he makes that the whole character,
Yes. Yes. And it's too bad. I think the weakening of Frodo started out of a somewhat necessity, which is, like, I'm all for, like, dropping Glorfindel, adding Arwen, because first and foremost, more female representation, woman representation. That's really important, especially because of how important Arwen is to the whole story. We just get it in the appendices. Like, I don't know how I don't know how Tolkien would have fit that in without making that part of the book just too, like, this isn't a book about romance. There's not much kissing in it. You know what I mean? Very Princess Bride, opposite of Princess Bride in that way. But so I'm all for that, except that it happened at the expense of Frodo's heroism. Like, he is a more passive, like, person in distress, and everyone's just, like, ferrying him along rather than him being the one making decisions and doing the right thing most of the time. Like, he succeeded at his quest in the book, which was to get to Mount Doom. It was not to cast it into the fire. They weren't going to make anyone swear an oath to do that. No. Because that would be...
And he doesn't even swear an oath to get it. That he just says, I'll do what I can.
Yep, exactly.
And so the thing with Frodo is that I think they could have probably kept him more or less the same in Fellowship, but then when they split off from the group and it's just him and Sam, they definitely had an opportunity to, like, show more of what Frodo's about, and I think particularly like when they first meet Gollum is, like, an excellent example of how they could have done that. And, like, using that more about, like, the promise that Gollum has made. I don't know. It sucks.
I agree. And to your point about the promise that Gollum made, like, that would have been a really useful way. It's super interesting in the book. That's a way of showing how the ring actually works on people.
Yeah.
Versus, like, I to me, that it's a little heavy handed with, like, in the appendices to the extended edition, someone compares the ring to like heroin, and it's like, okay, that's interesting, but like you overdid it a little bit. Like, yes, it's addictive, yes, it's corrupting, blah 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 blah, but like, it does other things in other ways. And Frodo was a great person for much longer than we see him being. Under the influence of the ring. And
that's why I think it was interesting that they make it affect Frodo so much. They make it affect Faramir so much. Obviously, Boromir. But then when they don't do that with Sam, they like leave it alone. You know, he has 1 second of like, I don't know, maybe I won't give it to you, but he doesn't say anything. He just holds it out weird. And
they like slow the time down of him handing it over, and it's like, I guess that's a good way to show, not tell, but they make the ring they lean way too much into the like men are weak thing. Like, that whole trope is, we've talked about that to death.
No, but I mean, like, agree.
Yeah,
it's, I don't know, but so in the book, it's very sweet when they reunite. You know, like Frodo can hardly believe it that Sam is there. He thinks it's a dream, but he's like, but all my dreams were bad. So he's like trying to do like the does not compute.
I know, all the floating calculus.
He's like, what is happening?
And Orc was whipping me, and then it turned into Sam. What the?
Yeah, he's like, Sam, are you being mean? What is this? Like, but then, you know, when he finally, like, realizes it's Sam, he, like, lays in Sam's arms, closing his eyes like a child at rest when night fears are driven away by some loved voice or hand. And I love that it goes on to say that Sam felt that he could sit like that in endless happiness, but it was not allowed. It was not enough to find his master. He had still to try and save him. I'm like, damn, it's all on Sam, you guys. It's all on Sam right now. And he knows it.
Tolkien says this point blank in at least 2 letters, that Sam is the hero and Sam is the emotional heart of the story. And we see that on full display with this chapter and the previous chapter of the Sam Gollum Frodo side plot. And I freaking love it. Like, it is all on Sam, but like, he does his job better than anyone else does their job, and I love him for it. Oh,
he's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
He's so great, and it's like, because I do love Frodo. It's just harder with movie Frodo. You know what I mean? But so, like, what we've been talking about is when Frodo does snap at Sam. He at first he's like super pumped that Sam has the ring. He calls Sam a marvel. He's like, "Wow, like you're amazing." But then his tone changes, and he asks Sam to give it back. And poor sweet Sam, as he's handing it to him, he says, "But you're in the land of Mordor now, sir. And when you get out, you'll see the fiery mountain and all. You'll find the ring very dangerous now and very hard to bear. If it's too hard a job, I could share it with you, maybe." Like, I don't know. I guess you could argue that Sam is, like, trying to keep the ring. But this feels so Sam to me. Like, I mean, we just referenced it, right? Like, Sam trying to carry more weight at the very beginning of this story. He's doing it again here, you know? But obviously, Frodo can't have that. And he's like, "No, you won't, you thief," you know. And I can hear it. And when like Elijah Wood could say it like all mean, but by the time Frodo snaps out of it, like at first Frodo, like he goes into this whole, like you get into Frodo's head for a second, and he sees Sam as like an orc and like this nasty
which was
creature.
Like such a really cool resurgence of what we see in many meetings with Frodo seeing Bilbo, and like that moment is it's like a worse, like horrible moment, and so cool. Again, such a interesting way to show the power of the ring at work that was a little flat in the film, in my opinion.
Agreed. So when Frodo snaps out of it, he sees Sam kneeling before him, his face wrung with pain, as if he had been stabbed in the heart. Tears welled from his eyes. And when I was reading this the other day, I was trying to read it to Josh, and I started crying.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
I know. I was listening to the Andy Serkis audiobook, and he does such a killer job at this moment. Like, the drama is on full display, and I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Oh.
And it's like, Frodo apologizes, and Sam, finds another way to help. But, oof. Oh my god, it just hurt so bad.
It sure did.
Especially because we had been in Sam's head for so long. Knowing that Sam had always been putting Frodo first and trying to save him, and then to be like, ugh.
I know. It's like...
Sure, apologize.
I know, right?
That'd cut me to the quick, like...
It sure did. Ugh. And then salted the wound, too, because you also have seen so much from Frodo's perspective throughout the work that you, have this sympathy for him. And, what unimaginable turmoil he's been through. Getting stabbed in the neck by Shelob, tortured, manhandled, I can only imagine how horrible. Poisoned, exactly, on down the line. It's just so hard. So, I said, we all probably would have been just as dickish, but doesn't mean it doesn't hurt still.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting parallel of the work of the enemy, that we saw in the other chat in the Pyre of Denethor. That's the other thing that is happening here is the ring is driving schisms between this relationship. And that's why the book version of this relationship is so much better, in my opinion, because you can see that it can withstand that turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to believe. I'm taken out of the immersion of the movie more. It's we know Sam's really loyal to Frodo. We know Frodo loves Sam, but again, it feels like a one-way relationship, and that's really hard to watch, especially if you've been in one.
Yeah, I think that they could have, because I feel like Sean Astin really does an amazing job at Sam.
Killer.
And so I think that they should have given some, they could have tweaked Elijah's lines a little bit. You know what I mean? We could have had, I'm not even thinking that we would have to take up any more runtime.
Sure.
We just have to, change his attitude and, have it be more gradual with the way that the ring is acting on him, Yeah.
And I think Elijah would have done a great job with that.
Agree.
I no shade to him. I don't think any actor in the whole film trilogy is the problem.
Mm-mm.
It's the writing, I hate to say, and some of the editing choices and things like that, but that caused this weird that character is not as fully fleshed out as I wish they... That's all I wanted, was just fully fleshed out characters. And like you said, Peter will latch on to all right, at this stage in the story, I'm hanging my entire framing of who Frodo is on this line of how mean he is to Sam. It's it didn't go like that, man.
Yeah. And and it's it's more dramatic or whatever, but I think that the same way, if you're going to say that we can't have Aragorn, immediately be I'm going to, if you want him to be this hesitant dude and you give him an arc, right? It's whatever at this point, it's sure, fine. Because, I do love movie Aragorn. He's just different,
Yeah.
But with Frodo, why couldn't you have given him a similar build, right? He is just immediately, can't handle the ring, all the time. Even when, this is definitely when Kali was on last, when we were talking about him getting stabbed by the Witch King, and he immediately is just, frothing at the mouth. And it's no, he tries to keep it together.
I was just listening to that episode, and I agree with you 100%. My guy had, a piece of pure evil in his shoulder for weeks, or a week. And, and he was not good, but he wasn't turning into.
But that's the thing about Frodo is that he's trying to, like, you could have had an exchange where Sam is like, noticing him. Like, Sam should always be noticing that Frodo is, if he's unwell, more than anyone else.
Yes.
And so you could have just had a little moment where it's like, Frodo, like, I know you're not feeling well. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, you could have had, like, a split second of that, before turning into freaking, like, the makeup that they did on him to make him look like a zombie is so weird. It's too much. It's too much. But,
too much.
I think that there's things like that. There's just, like, that's why I started, like, on TikTok in the beginning, because I was just like, there's just, like, you could throw this one line in there, and that would help so much with, like, I understand you have limited time to show things or tell us things, but, like, give them back this one thing, and you'd be closer, or you would be able to communicate a little bit more about who that character is.
Yes.
And there's so many like that with Frodo. But my favorite one for Frodo is in The Taming of Smeagol. That would have been easy to do.
I agree.
But no. It's fine. I mean, it's funny because we say all this, but, like, I rewatched these movies, like, 4 times last year. So, like,
right.
Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Like, I'm rewatching them now. So
right, there you go.
And they're great. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in, like, a weird feelings about, like,
I know.
Because then there's moments like we were talking about last time with Eowyn. Like, I love that they changed how Theoden dies. Like, Eowyn gets to talk to him, not Mary, not Éomer. It's Eowyn in the movie, and that's better. That's better. Like, you know what I mean? There's stuff like that where it's like, yes, go for it. Or like a change that they made, and it's like, yeah, that totally works.
Yeah.
But I think with Frodo and Sam, it's harder to accept because they are so, like, who they are is so core to not just, like, the story, but how the ring works, and, like, how they get things done. And it's because of their relationship that they're able to do it. It's not just, you know what I mean? So I think that's what the struggle is, really.
I've been, my favorite book for a long time in the trilogy was The Two Towers, because it's just the one that reads the fastest. Like, oh my God, there's so much action. It's so cool. But the second half is kind of like, this is interesting, I guess. But it's, when you're 14, it's a little boring.
Yeah.
But, like, book 6 now as a 30-year-old is, like, the best. It's so cool. Because we're watching Tolkien work through the trauma of World War I, in a sense. Like, we're watching him, like, the terrible advice Sam gives Frodo of, like, well, you're not going to get better if you talk about it. No. Like, no, that's not how psychology works, my guy. No, but
he's like, just don't think about it and you'll feel better.
Someone, I think on a Facebook group I'm in, mentioned, like, or maybe that was in the Discord, like, do you think that was a representation of
shell shock,
like bad advice that veterans got after having shell shock? And I think, like, that's such an interesting way to bring that in, because, like, no, we see, I think, quite plainly that Tolkien doesn't agree with that. Like, we see them having to work through these things and not succumb to, like, just like having a stiff upper lip. That doesn't work. Like, we know that does. It's the dependency on each other that pulls you forward. Right?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because it's like with Sam, he's just kind of like, I gotta get you to a place where I can get you out of here. He's like, I can't talk right now. We gotta go,
Yeah, there's a practicality to it. Like, now is not the time.
to, like, unpack your trauma.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I don't think we ever get to a point where they do talk about it.
Not that we see, for sure.
Right, but the way that the trajectory of the story goes, he goes to Valinor, right? Because he's still...
That's where the ultimate healing has to happen.
Weight,
yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of sad to think that like he can't. Like I know physically there are some things that couldn't be healed, but like I don't know like emotionally.
That was like the real sacrifice of Frodo, more than the
Yeah.
physical being forever harmed. Is like he sacrificed his soul in a lot of ways, and that's sad.
Yeah.
Like that's real sad. That's hard.
Real sad.
It
Oh, now I'm thinking about the end of the story. I'm gonna cry.
I know.
Don't do this to me, Nick.
We're not there yet.
Okay, no, it's not about that. Shoot, did I lose my thought? Maybe it'll come back to me. No, we'll move on. If it comes back to me, I'll jump in.
All right. Well, I mean, my last note really is that when we have to escape Ungol,
Mm-hmm.
like again, it's not a problem in the movie. You know, it's just kind of like, wow, we made it to Mordor, Mr. Frodo. But it's like we mentioned earlier, it's our second cracking structure, and so they try to get through the gate again. This time, it's even like there's no way, you know. And it takes not only Sam holding up the file and saying like Elbereth Githoniel and Frodo saying the other phrase that I don't remember how to pronounce.
Rindel and Kalima, yeah.
Yeah, he says that, like the same thing that he says to Shelob.
Yep.
So both of that together, and then they run, and only by them running, what is it, it says the will of the Watchers was broken with a suddenness like the snapping of a cord, and Frodo and Sam stumbled forward. Then they ran through the gate and past the great seated figures with their glittering eyes. So, like, the creepy statue has eyes, if we forgot to say that before.
Mm-hmm.
There was a crack. The keystone of the arch crashed almost on their heels, and the wall above crumbled and fell in ruin. Only by a hair did they escape. A bell clanged, and from the Watchers there went up a high and dreadful wail. Far above the darkness, it was answered. So, like, the first call did work, because there's no way that they were just around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the black sky, there came dropping like a bolt, a winged shape, rending the clouds with a ghastly shriek. So we've got a Nazgul.
Dun, dun, dun.
Nazgul in the movie. Which is interesting, like, we know that they're still around in the movie, like, we see them towards the end, but post, like, Witch King dying,
kind of don't see them till till the battle at the Black Gate, when they're flying away from that battle.
Mm-hmm.
We won't talk about that too much, but I thought that was weird because it's a perfect moment of tension, and like it makes sense that not all of the Nazgul would be at the Battle of Pelennor Fields and the Siege of Minas Tirith. Like, just makes sense that some of them would be like running point, especially because we learn about this in the Choices of Master Samwise. Like, the baddies know that someone's getting in. They surmise that it's a elvish warrior and some other spy, but and then they catch Frodo, and so that's validated. Like, I don't know. It was a weird choice to leave this like high tension moment out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's almost like that they, because they kind of pair Shelob with the, the battle, like the Pelennor Fields, sort of. So it's almost like everybody gets a high tension moment at the same time, and then it goes down again. But I don't know, just thinking realistically about how Mordor is, they shouldn't have an easy time. It's, you know what I mean? Like, this should be the real hard part. Like, getting around without being caught, I mean, that is, like, a magical feat of theirs that they've done. But, like, this should just be, like, obstacle after obstacle, really, at this point, while the other guys figure out what they're gonna do.
And it was weird, too, because, like, they spend a decent amount of time showing them just, like, not having a fun time hiking across, across the Morannon. like that plane. And like, that's cool. Like, I like that they still depicted that and didn't just cut it, because like that is an important part of the story. But like, they could have shortened that a little bit and added just a touch of higher tension here.
Yeah.
And that would have paired really well with Sam and Frodo needing for the forces of Gondor and Rohan to
needing
march
a distraction.
To the gate. Exactly. Like, it would have just heightened that need.
Yeah, it would have been like, guys, get it together. They're being chased.
Yes, exactly. And they could have done less talking about it and more just doing it. Doing the dang thing.
Right. Yeah, but that chapter leaves us kind of on a cliffhanger.
It does. That's the other thing I like about this subplot of theirs, is there's a lot of cliffhangers. Like, there's a lot of, and I love that. Like, if you're reading this for the first time, the end of the Two Towers is such a cool cliffhanger. Like, I can't imagine being in 1956 or 57 and having to wait months for the third book to come out. Like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh. And now with like our binging culture, you know, like we don't wait really. I feel like the last time I really had to wait for a book was like Harry Potter.
I know, right?
Know? And those never really had a cliffhanger. You always had you got through the end of the school year.
Yep.
Dang.
The closest we get is the Deathly Hallows, but and that's just like for a moment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but Sam and Frodo is chock full
of it. Yeah.
So that's where this chapter ends. So next time we'll be doing the Houses of Healing. I think next time we're hanging out in Gondor for a little bit, because we're doing Houses of Healing and the last debate, which is when, you know, our friends Aragorn, like, let's give him a Gandalf, are trying to figure out their next move, how they will best be most helpful to Frodo and Sam.
Such a good chapter. I love it.
Yeah.
Both of those chapters are awesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, both of these in the movie are, like, hot seconds, you know?
Yeah.
And they're full chapters. So that'll be fun.
Full chapters with lots of, like, complexity to them. But, again, it's that lower tension moment. There's, like, this longer span of time between the battle and what happens at the gate.
Yeah.
Than the movies depicted. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that is also, at the same time, like in the timeline in the back of the book, it's like things are happening fairly quickly. But, yeah, I think that Tolkien really wants you to have a sense of like things not being immediate. You know, like we have to sit in uncomfortable moments a lot of the time. Like, what the hell are we going to do? Type of thing.
Yes.
So there's some of that here as well.
There is, for sure.
I mean, I know this might be one of our longest episodes ever, but
I called it. I knew it. I knew I'd be part of that. I'm sorry.
This was a big chapter, though. The Tower of Cirith Ungol was a huge chapter that was like complete, like just skimmed over in the movies, and
it is.
Sam does not get his credit. Like, they spent way too much time. I know that you said that already, but showing orcs fighting, which I guess makes like that. So orcs fighting makes maybe for good cinema, but bad writing or reading. And whereas these poignant moments make for much better reading than for cinematic moments. So
yes, that's a good point. But I don't know, like, how long was that orc fight scene? Like, well over 2 minutes, I want to say. It could have been 30 seconds.
Especially if you're watching the extended version.
Yes.
Which is the only version I know. But
same.
Yeah, same.
Same.
Yeah, it's
how many, like, skulls getting crushed and people getting, like, pushed off the tower and, like, all right, okay, we get it.
Exactly. I think it's, like, it would have been interesting to, like, have Sam kind of maybe walk in on, like, the last bit of it and then realizing, like, oh, everybody's dead. Yeah, there's a lot of orc stuff, like, that gets cut out here that we didn't really get to talk about with, you know, Sam listening and him trying to sneak around. But they just did not give the time for it. One of these days I'm going to go through and be like, how would I recut Lord of the Rings?
Which I would love to hear your thoughts on, because you've pointed out so many good things so far in the podcast series. But it also is just like evidence to me, like this should have been a mini series.
Oh yeah.
At least. You know,
it's
like
just like years of television, honestly.
Which I want to say it was Belmont had this idea of like, maybe if Rings of Power does well, Amazon will be like,
yeah, he did say that.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm sold on that. Like, if they do not ruin this show, I don't think they will. But if like most people, both casual fans and Tolkien nerds, like it, please, you have the rights to it. You might as well.
Right. I think that's, an interesting idea, because there are all these tiny moments that happen that don't make it into the movies, but absolutely feel appropriate for TV. And I think you could lean into more of what the book gives you in like in the way that it's structured with like the cliffhangers and stuff.
Yes.
You could have part of a season just focus on, Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, and then cut to what, Frodo and Sam have been up to that whole time, and then cliffhanger until the next season,
Yeah, or like a mid-season, like sometimes they do like a couple week break sometimes, and like Game of Thrones did that like expertly. At least the first 5-6 seasons did, and like I want more of that. Like I hope we get that in Rings of Power for sure.
Yeah, that'll be. I'm excited. It's gonna be good.
I am too.
It's gonna be good. All signs
point to good.
Feel pretty good right now. So, thank you so much for joining us, Nick. Thank you, Kali, for a bang up first episode on the team, and we will be back next time with the Houses of Healing and the last debate, and more Return of the King extended edition. So,
woot! Can't wait to hear it, guys.
Yay!